All right, welcome to another video from the chart readers. Feels good to be making these. I had a hectic 72 hours, but hopefully we'll be back to consistent next week. On this video, we are going to look at the major markets. So we'll look at the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, and the SP-500. We will do what we always do, right? We'll do the daily and the weekly. We will look at the monthly because we just closed the last month, right? So we'll kind of see where that established itself. From there, we have our 5 moving averages. There's 2 here actually, these horizontal support and resistance lines, and then when we're done up here we will use the MACD and the RSI as the lower indicators. Again, I like the RSI a little more than the MACD. I just want to make sure these are kind of saying the same thing for consistency, and then 80% of the work is here. This is the last 20. Excuse me, a little burp. So look, it's been an interesting couple weeks really, right? I remember just thinking we were going to go down under 10,000. We made a really good run, not quite as good a run as the Dow Jones, and I'll talk about that a little more, right? But yeah, this was just not able to get over the 100 and the 50, right? Obviously, the Dow Jones did. I think the S&P 500 did as well, right? So let's just do that real quick. Let's just look at all of them just to establish that, because honestly, I'm not 1,000%. Yeah, so S&P was able to get over the 50, but not the 100. It opened above the 100, but it definitely closed down here, right? And then it closed super close to it, but definitely didn't break it, right? And then the DJ30, the Dow Jones, not only broke the 50 and the 100, but it actually broke the 200. It just couldn't get over this line right here, right? But it broke the 200, actually did confirm it. Not great confirmation. Again, confirmed it. Not great confirmation. And then obviously lost it, right? But still kind of did this weird recovery. But again, we'll get to the Dow Jones a little bit later. But just remember this little recovery right here over the last 2 days, because really, it's different from the NASDAQ. It's definitely, again, you can still see that same curve, right? But the NASDAQ just isn't looking as positive because, again, opens here, closes here, opens here, closes here, right? So still did better than the day before, don't get me wrong, but it definitely lost some people some money. Not only that, you know, there were moments where it looked like it was going to do even worse than the day before and just, you know, free fall back to this 10,000, right? Again, ugly RSI, and the MACD is kind of starting to turn there as well, right? So right now, I'm going to be a little pessimistic here. That said, I've said it a number of times, right? This one right now is under the death line, right? 10,844. The SP-500, I think it's close to it, but yeah, it's well above it actually. I was completely wrong. It is well above it. And then the DJ30, I believe, is also well above it, right? So we're sitting up here and this is here. I do believe that all 3 need to be under before things get really bad, or all 3 need to be well above, right, before things get really good. The fact that they're just kind of inconsistent like that is just, I think it just means choppier waters, right? Until the 3 of them decide to unify and move together, either up or down, it's gonna be nothing more than choppy waters, right? So, and again, we had it here. Where was it? Or maybe we didn't have it here. But we're starting to get a lot more horizontal. These lines are starting to come down a little bit, and we're going to start maybe making a 4-line cluster, right? So, and again, eventually it'll either go up or down on the cluster, right? But overall, daily doesn't look that good. Weekly doesn't look that good. Weekly looks like it might get even worse, right? But all that said, the other 2 are still trying to do their best to like save the NASDAQ, right? So looking at the S&P 500, so this is actually already sitting in a cluster of 4, right? It came as low as here, came as high as here, came as low as here. Hey, it might be kind of coming back up to here, but at this point, it seems like we're going to be going horizontal between these 4, and more than likely this line right here, right? And it's actually kind of funny because this line almost seems like the halfway point between breaking the 200 and being really good, and then losing the death line and being really bad, right? So we're kind of right in that midpoint of what does this thing want to do, you know? And I would say the NASDAQ's been the worst, the S&P 500's been in the middle, and the Dow Jones has been the best. So it's actually kind of ironic that this thing is sitting in the middle, trying to decide who it wants to follow, right? But again, look, there's a good chance that we maybe bounce up and go as high as here, this 3,900, actually almost to the dot, right? Maybe kind of go up the channel before we go back the channel. That said, it might be a little hard to break this right here, right? This is a 2-line cluster. There's definitely one of my lines right there. And 1, 2, 3 days under the 8's not a good thing to be at, right? So a couple ways this could play out. The worst thing would be to lose the 20, right? You don't want the S&P 500 to start doing bad because, again, there's only 3. And if 2 start to do bad, that 1 doing good just becomes that much harder to turn it all around, right? Looking at the weekly, it's actually not a bad weekly. We're 2 weeks over the 8. I am happy to see that. I don't like the fact that we lost most of this candle, right? So did really well. This right here is about 50%. I mean, we came all the way down to like, what, 90%, right? There's literally nothing left of this good week, right? That is not a good thing. Again, doesn't look great on the weekly, doesn't look great on the weekly down here. Man, hopefully the lowest we do go is whatever this 8 is, 37.25. Let's just round by a couple pennies, right? Hopefully we don't go any lower than that 37.25. And again, just kind of maybe even start this 4 cluster channel on the weekly. And hey, that's a high up there one, right? So if it could get over these 2, that's good. Worst thing would be making a cluster down here, right? Which is the down here to come back down here. Because once we come back down here, way too close to the death line, right? So a lot is actually riding on the S&P 500. This is right in the middle of the 2, and it's either going to go up and follow the DJ30, or it's going to go down and follow the NASDAQ. Again, just look at the strength of this chart, right? I'm going to literally just keep this view and go over all 3 one more time. You can see, let me just kind of draw this real quick. We have that nice uptrend going, right? When we look at the SP-500, we don't have as steep, actually, I wonder if I can do this. Okay, give me a second. We're going to learn something together. Let me do DJ30. Let me do here to here one more time. And again, what am I doing? I'm doing this corner to this corner. Actually, let me do, I think this corner to that corner. Yeah, that's the actual. So we hit this corner and then we hit this corner. So that's our line. So now let's see what the S&P 500 looks like compared to that. Definitely not as good, right? You can see it actually almost was as steep, even a little steeper at times on the S&P. Unfortunately, this really slapped it down and brought us well below what the Dow Jones is doing. And then coming to the NASDAQ, again, you can see it, right? It had the same almost incline and then just loses it like it did with the S&P 500. So actually, this and this look pretty similar, right? They both had that uptrend with the Dow, and then they both lost it. This just didn't lose it as dramatically. And then again, the DJ30 just trying to maintain its strength, right? Trying again to get over the 200, right? Because, hey, if this cannot hold it, honestly, it will be bad. If this slaps us down, oh man, it's not good, because the whole market's been doing well on the Dow Jones, right? So I'm glad it's trying to make another attempt, right? Doing well, better than the 8. Obviously, we wanted to hit the 8 and bounce up. Went just a little lower, but still kind of did the bounce up, right? Now it's just a matter of what are you going to do on the 200. The weekly doesn't look too bad. Again, I talk about 50% candle, right? 50% candle's about here. I'm glad we finished up here. We actually finished about 75% of it, right? Only losing maybe 25% of this thing, right? So that is a good week over week look. I don't like that RSI. That thing is really ugly. I don't like that there's a two-line cluster here on the weekly. That's definitely harder to break than on the daily. It just is. You know, there's a couple things that are a little worrisome. But look, in the end, all that matters, what's this number? 32,568. Okay, if we can get over that, we'll be over the 200, and then hey, hopefully that'll be strong enough to bring the S&P up, and then hopefully that'll be strong enough to bring the Dow up. Otherwise, if this gets rejected off the 200, it'll be really bad. It will, you know. This is a good sign. So generally when a lower line breaks above a bigger line, you can see the 20 went above the 50. That's a good thing. I think that's called a golden cross. You know, I just don't want this 200 to come down and cross under, because again, when a big one does, that's a bad thing. But again, that's a little too deep strategy. Nonetheless, 200 is what matters here. And then really, I'm gonna say it. The NASDAQ looks bad, and if the NASDAQ loses this 10,000 line, that'll be bad. We've only tested it once, so hey, maybe we'll test it again and get a little bounce up, but don't want to lose 10,000. Just psychologically, it'll be really bad if we drop to 4 digits instead of 5 digits. You know what I mean? So trade safely. Make sure you're watching the Dow Jones, even if you're mainly a tech trader like I am, right? Make sure you know what the Dow is doing. And hey, maybe move out of tech and, you know, trade some more Dow Jones industrial companies, right? So trade safely. I hope you're learning, and feels good to make these videos again.